Hi, welcome to Explore and Draw. Today we're going to be doing an Easter salt dough creative workshop. It's wonderful to have you all here. Explore and Draw is an art group to encourage people to connect with their inner creative. My name is Luna Gigot. I'm going to talk to you today about how to make salt dough eggs. It's very simple. All you need to do is you need to have some plain flour and salt and water. So it's 2 cups of plain flour to 1 cup of salt to 1 cup of warm water. And you need to set your oven on the lowest setting. On my oven, that's an S. Now, you put your dry ingredients in a bowl. So you put your 2 cups of flour and your 1 cup of salt in here and you stir it around. And then you add your warm water and you sort of knead it in the bowl until you get it to a lovely like bread-like consistency. Now, if the dough is too wet, then just add a little bit more flour. And if it's too dry, then just add a little bit more water as you go. So these eggs that I've created here, they're all inspired by female artists. And so what you can do is you can check these ones out online. I'm going to tell you a bit more about them individually later. Or you can look up your own inspiration. It can be anything, but you could look up female artists as well and find out what ones you discover. And why don't you check me out on Facebook? I'm on Explore and Draw on Facebook, and everyone's going to be sending in their designs. So message me or post your design once you've made them. Maybe you're making them, you're in isolation like we are here in the UK. And you make them with your family and then you post your creations. And what that does is that just encourages everyone else. It inspires everyone else. So I've got my flour and salt and water and I'm just going to mould that. Now, first of all, I go into like a ball with it. If I want to make it in this shape, like this egg here, I do it like a ball like that. And then I get the spoon and I just use the dessert spoon. You see it's slightly pointy. And I just do that around the edge of the salt dough just to give it that nice shape. Now, when you're at home and you're doing this, you can take more time to get your egg to look like a real egg. So I'm just doing this very quickly. You can smooth out any of your little ruffles. Now, if this starts to crack at this point, that means that it's too dry. So you will need to add a little bit of water because if you bake it with the crack, you'll get that. That could look like a little Salvador Dali egg, couldn't it? And you put like a little flour, but if you don't want them to crack really, so just add a bit more. If they're too soft and they won't mould properly, maybe a little bit more flour. So use your judgment there. So you place them on a very well floured baking tray. Okay, you make all your creations and you put them on there. It has to be well floured so that it doesn't stick to the baking tray. Okay. Now, you can make Easter eggs in different sizes, like the ones I have here, or you can make these, which you could hang from a branch or from, put them on ribbon and string them up anywhere you like, really. And they can even go on your Christmas tree, can't they? So these ones I rolled with a rolling pin on a floured surface. You don't want it, once you've got your dough to the right consistency, you don't want to change that consistency. So just flour it a bit so you don't stick to the rolling pin. I rolled it out. I used like the end of a cup to press out this shape. You could use cutters. People have used cutters. And then I slightly moulded it to an egg shape. And then I used the end of a straw to just make that hole. But you can make that hole however. Ask your adult to do that. So that's how you make the salt dough. Now you put them in the oven on your lowest setting for 3 hours and you set your timer. Make sure you set your timer because you don't want to, leave that oven on all night and completely forget about it. After 3 hours, check your eggs, your salt dough creations. And when you get this sound, like bread, when you've made bread and you get that knocking sound, that's when it's done. Now, if after 3 hours you still got a little bit of softness in that egg, that's when you need to put it back in the oven. And then I would time it every half an hour. Now, sometimes, depending on the size of your creations, you might need 5 or 6 hours. You might take them out and then in the morning think, actually, they're still a bit soft. If that's the case, set the oven to the lowest temperature again and just bake them for a couple more hours. Set your timer and check them. The reason you want them rock hard is you want them to last, so that when you've made your beautiful creations, you can look back on them and think, I made those when I was in isolation, and remember it as a lovely time when you had that time for yourself, that time for your creativity. Now, I got a bit carried away making these, and I made this little chick. This is quite cute, and your children might want to make a little chick. The young ones might want to make that. So what you have to remember is if you're adding one bit of dough, like the head to the body, then there's something you need to know. Ellie Potter would know this, really. So you get your dough and you make it like a snowman. You make your bigger roll of dough like that. And then you get your head, make that slightly smaller, like that. Now, if I just stick this head to that body, when I bake it, it could just fall off, and you don't want all the children crying, not when they're indoors and you're stuck in there with them. So just get your fork, scratch that up a little bit, and then do the same with the head. Make some marks so it's a little bit rough. Then you just mix up some of your plain flour with water. I've done that in a little cup. And you just paste that on there so it acts like a bit of a glue. And you put that there. Now this is because I warmed it up with my hands. It's going to have lost its shape. But then I stick the chick's head on top like that. Okay, now to make the feathers, I found that the fork's a very useful little tool for these salt eggs. You can just do that, and that almost makes like the feathers. Now, because I don't want to have, when you're making these, some of your children, they might want to make robots and dinosaurs, but what you want to encourage is you don't have too many parts stuck on, because every part you stick on could create a break when you bake it in the oven. So what I done to make the wings is I just made indentations with my spoon. Spoon comes in handy as well, like that. And then that gives you the wings. Now with the beak, you could add a beak just by putting another bit of glue, scoring it and squishing it on, or you can just point it like that. And then you go round with your fork, just making all the feathers. Now, I can't wait to paint my one. I'm going to be live streaming again in a few days, so I'll post that on here and you can see what we've done for painting. So something like that, okay? And then you bake those in the oven on a well-floured surface. So they all go on the baking tray with that flour in the oven on your lowest setting for 3 hours. Now you can make more than 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of salt and 1 cup of water. You could double that, but why don't you make small batches? Because I found the more that I practiced and went along, the better that I got. So if you make small batches, you're not ruining it all. In the UK, we're only allowed to go out for essentials at the moment at lockdown. So what I done, I had to go and get a parcel from my local shop. And I went in there and I saw the flour and I saw toilet roll and I got everything I needed. So that was really good. So only go out when you need to, but when you need to with your shop, this is something you can buy and something you can do at a later date whenever you watch the video. Now, I'm going to go through my top tips so I don't forget anything. Make sure that your dough is not too dry. If it is, add a little water and add a little at a time. Don't make your mixture too wet. If it's too wet, just add a little bit more flour. If you want your eggs to be all the same size, so say you wanted to create something like this and you're going to display yours in an egg box that you've got, or a lovely bowl or something like that, you can weigh them so they're all the same size. I didn't, but you could do that. Make the bottom flat on your egg or your creation, so it's going to sit in the oven, it's not going to topple over. Make sure you put lots of flour on your baking tray so they don't stick, and make sure you set your timer, okay, so you don't forget about it. Tap it with a spoon when it's done to get that knocking noise. That's when you know it's ready. Okay, now I'm going to introduce you to the female artists that I discovered online. And that have inspired these eggs, and I'd like you to have a look, because you know, female artists, they've always took the back seat, haven't they? And I think it's lovely at this time of year when all the flowers are springing up and it's wonderful out there, and we can't go out there, can we? So we're just going to have fun, inspired by these wonderful female artists. Now, the first artist that I want to talk to you about is Kusama Yayoi. And she's a Japanese artist. And when she was a child, she laid in a field and all the flowers spoke to her. And they became an infinite amount of dots, like the head of the flowers reminded her of dots. And it's echoed in her work ever since. She's a really wonderful artist. If ever you get the chance to go to her exhibitions, the big installations, and you go into the exhibition and you just immerse yourself in this other world, it's very surreal. And it's quite chaotic, but there's a peace in there, peacefulness. Kusama, she was a very bold and courageous young woman, really, and she really wanted to get her artwork out there. So she'd go to very popular exhibitions and shows, and she might even set up outside trying to get her work out there. And she struggled her whole life trying to get her artwork. She stayed true to herself. You know, this artwork, when she started, was considered really out there. She's a very contemporary artist, but now she's 91 years old. She's known as the Princess of Polka Dots, and she's internationally known now. So she's a wonderful artist to be inspired by. Have a look at her on YouTube, watch some other videos about her. She's a fascinating woman. And really a lovely role model for young women today. There's another artist I want to talk to you about. This artist is an American artist called Georgia O'Keeffe. She was born in the prairies and she died in Mexico. So she was a wild woman, really, a wild artist. She'd done the most beautiful paintings of flowers and landscapes, and this is one of hers. And you notice she's using the complementary colours of the red and the green, and the red is really making the green pop out. What I found when I was painting these eggs is that you really enter into the mind of the artist as you're doing it. It's not about copying, but as you try to get the colours and you're making the marks, the same marks that those artists made, you really are beginning to understand how they worked. So when I painted this, I had the white of the flower, and then I had the green background, and then I used a little bit of green in the white, and then a little bit of white in the green, and then the red to offset it. And it was just wonderful taking that time to paint this egg. I used acrylic paints for this. You may at home not have acrylic paints. You might have watercolours, you might have poster paint. I even tried it with some food colouring. Let me just move on to that quickly before I talk about the last artist there, Hilma Klint. What I done when I made my salt dough egg creations is I made a little blank colour chart. And then what I done is I tried all the different colours. So these were my natural food colourings. These were some inks that I had laying about. So protect your surfaces if you're going to try those. And then some other paints that I found. Now, ideally, you want to use acrylic paint. If you don't have acrylic paint, then try experiment with what you do have. People come up with all fantastic ideas and send them to Explore and Draw on Facebook, and I'll share your creations online. One woman, when we done the colouring of the paper the other day, she used saffron and it looked wonderful. Someone else, I used turmeric. People were trying everything. Someone used cinnamon. If you paint with these watercolours, maybe even a felt tip might work, even a biro, that might work. But if you do use the watercolours, if you do want to seal it and you have any PVA glue, that's a good one. You can let them dry and then cover them in PVA so they last. The last artist that I want to talk to you about is my absolute favourite artist. Her name is Hilma Klint, and she was a Swedish artist in the 1900s. She painted these wonderful paintings, some of them 10 feet tall, and she didn't want her work exhibited till 20 years after her death. It actually was exhibited much later than that, and I got the privilege to see it at the Serpentine Gallery in London in 2016. It's called Painting the Unseen. And she's become a real inspiration and continues to be an inspiration to me now. She said that she painted the divine work through her, and she just painted exactly what she saw. She didn't change it. And I misread that to think that she painted really fast. But when I was painting this, I realised it wasn't fast at all. It was very slow and meditative and thought out. And it was a really lovely, calming feeling to paint in that artist's style. And I wonder what you'll find and what you'll try and all the artists you'll be inspired by. And if you get that feeling that you're using the same brushstrokes and that you get in the same mindset. And if you do, I hope that that inspires you. And like I say, please share that to Explore and Draw online. If you like these videos, then please subscribe to my channel, and then you'll get alerted when they come on, and you'll just be notified when they come online. Okay, so that's something that you can do for your salt dough eggs this Easter. If you like what I'm doing, then look at the link on my channel to buy me a coffee. If you're able, leave me a donation. It just helps us artists out at this difficult time. Until that time, keep creating, stay safe, and I'll speak to you later. Bye. Bye.